Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. Case 1. Anna Marie Cochran Rintala was born on July 30th, 1972, in Springfield, Hampton County, Massachusetts, USA. She graduated from Cathedral High School and received training at an emergency services school in Granby, Connecticut. After completing her training, she joined AMR Ambulance Medical Services and worked as a paramedic in Springfield and Holyoke. With a deep passion for her work, she always feels happy when she can help others in their difficult times and even save their lives. While working, Anna Marie met Cara Rintala, a fellow paramedic. The two have completely opposite personalities. Cara is calm, while Anna Marie is natural and open. Yet in 2004, they married, marking one of the first same-sex marriages in the United States. They later adopted a baby girl named Brianna. However, their marriage was not always smooth. On the evening of March 28, 2010, they had an argument over the phone. During this time, a friend of Cara visited their home, and when Anna Marie called from work to check in, she overheard the friend's voice. The friend's presence, without Anna Marie's prior knowledge, left her feeling betrayed. She believed Cara's failure to inform her of the visit was an act of disrespect. Around midnight, she texted Cara, expressing her frustration and stating that she hated their relationship. The following evening, on March 29th, Cara returned home to find Anna Marie dead at the bottom of the basement stairs in their Granby, Massachusetts home. When police arrived at the scene, they found Cara clutching Anna Marie's body, crying and screaming in despair. Initial investigations revealed that Anna Marie had been strangled, sustained head injuries, and that her body was covered in bright paint. Cara told police that Anna Marie had returned home around 8:30 a.m. after finishing her overnight shift. They had coffee together, played with their daughter Brianna, and had lunch. In the afternoon, Anna Marie asked Cara to take Brianna out so she could rest before her next shift that evening. Cara claimed she left the house around 3 p.m. and returned at 7 p.m., at which point she discovered Anna Marie unresponsive at the bottom of the basement stairs. She immediately took Brianna to a neighbor's house and asked them to call 911 before turning around and holding Anna Marie tightly until police arrived. During the investigation, it was revealed that Anna Marie's romantic life prior to her death was complicated. She had been involved in a relationship with Mark Oleksic, a married man she met through her job. Initially, they were just colleagues, but over time, they grew closer. On the day of her death, she texted Mark asking if he could pick her up at Best Buy at 6 a.m. Additionally, Anna Marie, who loved to shop, convinced Mark to co-sign 3 credit cards, including one with an outstanding balance of about $7,000. When questioned by authorities, Mark provided an alibi, claiming that on the day of Anna Marie's death, he had been out shopping and had receipts to prove it. Prosecutors also confirmed that there was no evidence suggesting Mark was angry about the debt, and Anna Marie had in fact paid him back. During her breakup with Cara a year before Anna Marie's death, she also rekindled her relationship with her ex-girlfriend, Springfield Police Officer Carla Daniele. During this time, she owed another $10,000 to Danielle's account before deciding to get back together with Cara in late 2009. However, at the time of the incident, Daniele was at the gym about half an hour away from the scene, and surveillance footage proved Danielle's testimony to be accurate. With no other clues to continue their investigation, detectives returned to focusing on Cara. Upon closer investigation, they discovered that Cara and Anna Marie's relationship was not only strained, but also violent. Colleagues had observed bruises on Anna Marie's body, although she often dismissed them as accidental injuries from bumping into objects. In 2008, Cara was arrested for assaulting Anna Marie, but she later withdrew the charges. Financial stress likely exacerbated their problems, as both were dealing with significant debt. Anna Marie owed $33,510 in credit card debt, while Cara owed $35,000. Additionally, Anna Marie had a habit of overspending and had secretly opened a credit account under Cara's name without Cara's knowledge. In 2009, Anna Marie and Cara each filed for divorce, but never finalized the process. During their separation, Anna Marie temporarily moved into her own apartment in South Hadley, but they reconciled in November of that year. In early 2010, in an effort to repair their relationship, Anna Marie and Cara took their daughter Brianna on a Caribbean cruise, hoping to start fresh. Investigators began questioning the timeline provided by Kara. According to her account, she left home around 3 p.m. that day, but she was not spotted on any surveillance cameras until around 5 p.m. At that time, the cameras showed Kara throwing a rag into a trash bin in the parking lot of a McDonald's in Holyoke. Upon testing, DNA traces belonging to Anna Marie were found on the rag. 2 weeks later, Kara filed a claim for Anna Marie's $512,000 life insurance policy. The payout, however, was delayed due to objections from Charles Cochran, Anna Marie's brother, and the contingent beneficiary. Charles argued that Kara should not receive the money because she might have been involved in Anna Marie's death. Following the incident, Kara took a leave of absence from work and moved in with her mother and stepfather in Narragansett, Rhode Island, along with her daughter, Brianna. She explained that she was not mentally fit to return to the home she had shared with Anna Marie. 6 months later, she sold the house and returned to work for the Ludlow Fire Department. During this period, she stayed with friends in Springfield and traveled back and forth between Rhode Island and Springfield to stay with her parents and Brianna when off duty. In April 2011, Kara resigned from her position and permanently moved to Narragansett to work full-time. Massachusetts State Police Detective Jamie McGarrion, the lead investigator in the case, stated that when he arrived at the scene around 7:20 p.m., Anna Marie's body was already stiff. However, the paint spilled across the scene was still wet, leading him to suspect that someone had tampered with the scene after Anna Marie's death. This unusual detail suggested that the crime scene had been deliberately staged to appear like a break-in. The paint seemed to have been used to cover bloodstains, and a nearby overturned 5-gallon can of paint was found. Additionally, a former medical examiner concluded that Anna Marie likely passed away sometime in the late morning to early afternoon. This raises the possibility that Kara was home at the time, making her testimony even more doubtful. Despite largely circumstantial evidence, Kara was arrested and charged with murder in October 2011. She is currently being held at the Western Massachusetts Regional Women's Correctional Center in Chicopee. Her first 2 trials, in 2013 and 2014, ended in mistrials due to deadlocked juries. However, in her 3rd trial in 2016, prosecutors presented evidence from an expert on paint drying times, as well as angry text messages exchanged between Kara and Anna Marie the night before the incident. They argued that Kara tried to fabricate an alibi by taking her daughter out after the crime. Prosecutors contended that on the day of the murder, Kara and Anna Marie had a heated argument, during which Anna Marie fell down the stairs. In a panic, Kara, frightened by a judge's warnings months earlier that Child Protective Services would intervene if the fights continued, strangled Anna Marie. Faced with the choice of calling for help and risking prosecution, losing her home, daughter, and livelihood, or attempting to cover up what happened, Kara allegedly opted for the latter. This time, the jury convicted Kara of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. However, that ruling was overturned in 2021, when a higher court determined that expert testimony about paint drying times was unreliable, leading to a retrial. Kara, who continues to maintain her innocence, made her 4th court appearance on September 6, 2023. During this trial, prosecutors focused on the timeline of the incident and did not call any experts to testify about the paint found at the scene. Kara's defense team countered the timeline with testimony from their own medical expert, who asserted that Anna Marie could have died after 3 p.m. that day. After a month-long trial, on October 5, 2023, Judge Francis Flannery of the Hampshire Superior Court delivered the verdict. Kara Rentala was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge compared to first-degree murder. The key distinction between these 2 charges lies in intent. First-degree murder requires a clear, premeditated plan or extreme cruelty, whereas voluntary manslaughter refers to an unplanned killing that occurs in the heat of passion or during a sudden confrontation. The sentencing terms for the 2 crimes are also completely different. While first-degree murder carries a life sentence without the possibility of parole, intentional manslaughter carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. Ultimately, Kara Rentala was sentenced to 12 to 14 years in prison, minus credit for time already served. Brianna, their daughter, is currently living with Kara's parents and occasionally visits her in prison. Since Anna Marie's death, Kara and her parents have refused to allow Anna Marie's parents to see Brianna. Recently, a judge in Rhode Island granted supervised visitation rights to Anna Marie's parents, Lucian and William Cochran, who live in Springfield and often care for Brianna. Years after Anna Marie's murder, the people of Massachusetts remain shocked and saddened by the tragedy. Russell Anderson, chief of the Granby Fire Department, who had employed both Anna Marie and Kara as EMTs, stated that both were excellent employees who always performed their duties well. He shared that he wanted Anna Marie's attacker to be brought to justice, but admitted he could never have imagined the perpetrator would turn out to be her partner. Case 2. Tammy Epperson was an attractive woman who had a modeling career, but left the industry due to substance abuse, and spent her life on Skid Row in Los Angeles. By the age of 30, she was addicted to drugs. However, Tammy recognized her problem and was determined to change her life. She decided to enter a rehabilitation program, and by 2000, at the age of 38, she had successfully turned her life around. Despite a long battle with addiction, Tammy was able to regain control and break free from the vicious cycle of substance abuse. She had completely overcome her bad habits and started a new chapter in her life. She decided to help others so that they too could find opportunities to improve their lives. Tammy lived in Banton Plaza, a community designed to support people looking for a fresh start. The state-funded facility serves as a safe haven for those who are beginning to recover from addiction, as well as those who have succeeded. For many, it becomes a place of protection from the outside world. The area is fenced and guarded by 24-hour security, and visitors are required to sign a logbook upon entry. Unfortunately, these security measures were not enough to deal with what happened next. Tammy lived in a small studio on the ground floor, where she was attacked by an attacker inside the building. When police arrived at the scene at around 9 p.m. on November 13, 2000. At the crime scene in Tammy's room, all the furniture was destroyed, glassware, ceramics, and appliances were all smashed and scattered on the floor. Tammy's personal belongings were thrown onto the bed, suggesting that the attacker may have been looking for something. Police suspect the motive may have been theft or drug-related activity. Tammy was lying on the floor, her face severely disfigured. Police considered the possibility that she had been abused, based on the nature of her injuries and the state of her clothing. The small space of the room, combined with the brutality of the attacker, left police stunned. According to police, the perpetrator targeted Tammy, slamming her against the wall multiple times, causing serious injuries. Tragically, the attacker did not stop there, continuing to beat her once she was on the floor. He used whatever he could find as a weapon. The attacker violently attacked Tammy, and then destroyed everything around her. This would have created a lot of noise, but none of the neighbors reported anything to the police during the incident. The police noted that the level of decomposition of the body indicated that she had been dead for at least a day before the police arrived. However, all the neighbors claimed that they had not heard anything, which seems unlikely given the poor soundproofing of the apartment. A close friend of Tammy's had previously reported to the police that he had not been able to contact her for several hours and was starting to worry. Eventually, he heard others saying that Tammy might be dead. Out of concern, he contacted the police. The police took his claims to heart and decided to send officers to check on Tammy in her apartment. Her once beautiful face was unrecognizable due to disfigurement. A large screwdriver, discovered under Tammy's shoulder, was likely the weapon used. Deep circular holes in her face led forensic experts to determine that this tool had been used in the attack. One of the police officers quickly speculated that the attack may have been motivated by Tammy's beauty. She was very attractive, and it seemed as if someone had wanted to ruin that beauty. The attack had targeted her face and neck, causing severe stab wounds and cuts that would have left with no chance of survival. A forensic expert was called to the scene to examine evidence in the apartment. His goal was to analyze the situation accurately, reconstruct the sequence of events, and piece together a comprehensive understanding of the crime scene. He spent 7 hours working in Tammy's apartment. This was followed by many more hours dedicated to analyzing, recording, processing, and organizing all the information gathered. A significant amount of blood was found in the bathroom, while the body was found in the living room. It is likely that the attack occurred while she was in the bathroom. The attacker then dragged Tammy into the living room. Once there, they laid her on the floor and continued to torture her, ultimately leading to her death. Forensic experts were faced with a major challenge because the attacker used a variety of murder weapons. A stool, then a vase, and finally a lamp. All of these items were broken and stained with blood and were left at the crime scene, suggesting they could contain vital evidence and DNA that could help identify the killer. All of the materials were collected and sent to a lab for thorough analysis. What was particularly shocking was that the loud noises went unnoticed by residents of the apartment complex. During the investigation of Tammy's small apartment, police discovered several key pieces of evidence in the sink, including a rag that likely contained the attacker's blood. Police also found a water bottle with a red fingerprint and a trash can containing several tissues with similar marks. In addition to the attack, Tammy had been abused, as evidenced by her disheveled clothing and underwear. This was confirmed by a forensic expert. The forensic expert took samples from Tammy's body to extract the DNA of the murder suspect. Due to the nature of the crime, the police began searching for Tammy's relatives. Inside her apartment, they found several framed photos of her modeling career and an educational certificate, along with documents about her addiction treatment. There was no sign of any family, friends, or boyfriends in her belongings. According to acquaintances, Tammy had indeed overcome her bad habits and was living a normal life. However, she still had many suspicious people around her who were struggling with addiction. Not only did she overcome her addiction, but she also got a respectable job. Tammy became an office manager at a Hollywood phone service that catered to celebrities. She also volunteered at a nearby church where she supported people struggling with addiction. She took on the role because she wanted to help people in need, because the attacker intended to harm her appearance, and because she was very attractive. The police suspected that the attacker could be Tammy's rejected lover or a secret admirer. Soon after, the police received information about a potential suspect. A resident of the apartment complex informed the police that the attacker could be Ronald Sims. He had a history of serious drug addiction and was still struggling with his own problems. Ronald had previously dated Tammy, but their relationship ended when she overcame her addiction, while he was also struggling to overcome his. Despite this, they remained in touch and maintained a friendly relationship. Tammy believed that Ronald needed her support, so she offered him advice and guidance based on her own experiences. Police quickly contacted Ronald as a potential suspect in the murder. However, he denied any wrongdoing, claiming he had a friendly relationship with Tammy and that they had never fought. He insisted that he could never hurt her. Ronald shared a darker story. He said that Tammy had met a man in her church counseling sessions who had become a stalker. To ensure her safety, Ronald felt the need to keep an eye on her. This stalker was Troy Powell, a 32-year-old man who was on probation after serving time for previous crimes. The three were friends and often socialized together, attending church together. However, it was felt that Troy had romantic feelings for Tammy. From their first meeting, he began pursuing her, showering her with flowers and stuffed animals. He would wait for her in his pickup truck almost every day, offering to give her rides. During the citywide bus driver strike, Tammy would occasionally ride in his truck, though she usually rode with someone else. Ronald knew Troy struggled with addiction, and Tammy considered him potentially dangerous, which is why she rarely took him up on his offers. She told Ronald multiple times that she only sought Troy's help occasionally. However, Troy misunderstood her as being willing to rely on him and believed that he had a chance with her. In reality, Tammy felt obligated to help him overcome his addiction, but had no desire for a romantic relationship. She gave him advice and support while keeping her distance. She made it clear to him that she was not interested in anything more than friendship. Despite this, Troy became increasingly persistent, and his obsession with Tammy became more evident. As a result, Tammy tried to avoid close contact with him. Ronald believed that Troy was involved in her murder. Troy was aggressive, short-tempered, and obsessive towards her. In Tammy's apartment, the police found a disturbing phone book containing records of many calls from Troy. The notes detailed the times he called, the length of time they talked. Many of these notes indicated that Tammy had asked him to stop calling her. Despite this, Troy continued to contact her on the same day, and for a long time. Eventually, one of Troy's acquaintances informed Ronald that Troy had confessed to the murder. Ronald then reported this to the police. According to witness statements, Troy stated that he had visited Tammy. They had talked, but then they had an argument. In a fit of rage, he said he had killed her. Troy was missing and may have escaped. The police checked the logs of Tammy's residence and discovered that Troy had entered the building on the day of the murder and left just hours later. As Troy leaves the building, he is asked about Tammy, as residents are required to accompany visitors. Troy smirked and claimed that Tammy was resting, and the guards believed him and allowed him to leave. He was the last person to visit Tammy's apartment. That same day, Ronald said he had plans to work with Tammy at the church. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer, which was unusual. The church confirmed that Tammy had not shown up. The next morning, Ronald went to her work, but she was still absent. He was struggling with substance abuse at the time and was not allowed into her apartment. However, he noticed Troy's red pickup truck parked outside, which made him worried. He continued to try calling Tammy, but she still did not answer, so he decided to call the police. Police pieced together the events of that tragic day and concluded that the night before the murder, Tammy left church with Troy. They stopped at a store where he bought a Bible. Troy convinced her that he needed help and advice with his addiction. Tammy felt she couldn't say no to him, which led him to her home. Police investigated Troy Powell's criminal history and discovered a long list of convictions, including serious offenses such as drug use and distribution, theft, and abuse. He had previously served time in prison for assaulting another woman he was stalking, who survived. Troy was clearly a danger to society, especially to women. Despite his criminal record, he appeared attractive to women. Police were able to locate Troy's vehicle, a red pickup truck with a description. Ronald gave a detailed account, saying that he had seen the car that Troy had used to meet Tammy on the day of the massacre. The police had a breakthrough when one of the patrol officers spotted an unfamiliar car in the hotel parking lot. The patrol officer identified it as a bright red pickup truck. He checked the license plate number and confirmed that it was Troy's car. The police were notified and quickly arrived to arrest Troy. They stood outside the hotel, waiting for Troy to drive away. Troy finally showed up, and he was arrested. The detainee identified himself as Charles Vinoy, and after examining the documents, they confirmed that he was telling the truth. Despite this, the authorities decided to detain him and investigate the red marks on his hat. He explained that his friend Troy had given him the car the day before, and that he had taken it that night along with a jacket, a camera, and other items. Charles and Troy were former cellmates, and had kept in touch after their release. The police quickly searched the hotel room and found a camera with film. After being developed, the photos showed Tammy, Charles, and Troy together. Charles said that they had all met at a church where Tammy supported people recovering from substance abuse problems. The DNA test took longer than expected, but eventually confirmed that the blood found on the baseball cap did not belong to Tammy. The police decided to question Charles, who eventually revealed that he had important information, but wanted protection from prosecution in exchange for it. The police agreed to his terms. Charles claimed that Troy had confessed to killing Tammy, who never returned his feelings. Troy gave Charles the pickup truck and planned to escape from the police. Charles Vinoy claimed that he had nothing to do with the case. However, during questioning, he provided details about Tammy's death that only the criminals or witnesses would know. It is unclear whether he learned this information from Troy or if he was present at the crime scene. As a result, Charles was forced to cooperate with the investigation. He informed the police that Troy was supposed to call him at 7 p.m. that same day. Charles agreed to assist the police in apprehending the killer. Troy then called Charles, and during that time, the police were able to locate location Troy. He was arrested while in a hotel. His DNA was found on Tammy's body after the attack, and multiple fingerprints linked him to various items. Tammy's blood was also found on his clothing, leading Troy to be held responsible for the crime. In his confession, Troy admitted to killing Tammy, but claimed that he was insane at the time. He said he had mental health issues and had not taken his prescribed medication for a long time due to financial difficulties. Troy was charged with premeditated murder, burglary, abuse, and torture, giving the prosecution a strong case for the death penalty. However, Troy denied responsibility. He claimed that he suffered from a mental disorder that made him unfit to stand trial. A psychiatric evaluation was therefore ordered, which ultimately determined that he was sane during the attack. Troy recounted the events of the case in detail to his friend Charles, who later became a key witness for the prosecution. Troy attributed his actions to childhood trauma, saying that he had suffered from abuse by his alcoholic father throughout his childhood. He argued that this had led to a psychological problem that caused him to react violently whenever he was rejected by a woman. A key moment in the hearing was Troy's testimony in his defense. He admitted that he could have been the killer, but claimed that he could not remember anything. He also believed that Tammy was still alive when he left the apartment, arguing that the murder was not planned. One of the most shocking allegations from the prosecution was that Troy tortured Tammy for a long time before she died. The jury found Troy Powell guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to death. He is currently on death row at San Quentin State Prison, awaiting execution. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Sabrina Zunick. Sabrina Zunick was born on October 27, 1994, in Cleveland, Ohio, United States. Her father is Mark Zunick, and her mother is Susan Edwards. Sabrina's family lived in social isolation. Both of her parents struggled with banned substance and alcohol addiction. They were arrested several times. Therefore, from the age of 3, her grandmother took over her upbringing. By the age of 4, Sabrina was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a condition related to a nervous system disorder, which severely affected her ability to control herself. She also suffered from oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. Throughout her childhood, Sabrina faced great difficulties in controlling her behavior. She often displayed aggression and lack of self-control, leading to conflicts with her classmates. This continued throughout her adolescence, causing her to become increasingly isolated and unable to maintain normal social relationships. At age 14, Sabrina was removed from her grandmother's care and placed in an orphanage run by the Lake County Department of Children's Services. She lived in the orphanage for 2 years. In 2011, Sabrina was adopted by Kevin Knopfel and Lisa, so moved to live with them in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. Lisa Knopfel is a compassionate woman who cares for and supports those around her. Lisa, born on May 2, 1971 in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, she is the daughter of Clark and Rita. After marrying Kevin, she moved to Lake County in 2000 and became the mother of 2 daughters, Megan and Haley. With a kind heart and a passion for learning, Lisa works as a social worker in the juvenile department of Cuyahoga County, Ohio. Her biggest dream is to open an orphanage where she can provide care and love to children in difficult circumstances. In here, Lisa met Sabrina. Joining the Knopfel family had a profound and transformative impact on Sabrina. As a high school student, she began to develop a love for learning, improved her grades, and started planning for her future. One day, Sabrina confided in her adoptive parents about her dream of becoming a model and pursuing a career in cosmetology. Seeing the positive changes in Sabrina, Lisa and Kevin were very happy and supported her. Sabrina also developed a deep bond with Lisa and the rest of the Knopfel family. Many people around them commented that Lisa and Sabrina seemed like real sisters. Sabrina often expressed her admiration for Lisa, considered her a role model, and affectionately referred to her as older sister. However, the peace in the family didn't last long. Problems emerged 6 months after Sabrina joined the household. Out of nowhere, Sabrina began accusing Lisa of not loving her and favoring Lisa's biological daughters. As the relationship between Sabrina and Lisa worsened, Sabrina grew closer to Kevin. Friends and family began noticing unsettling behavior between the two. Their conversations and jokes seemed more like those of a couple than a father and daughter. On October 27, 2012, Sabrina turned 18. Legally, she was supposed to leave the foster home and live independently. However, Sabrina requested permission from her adoptive parents to stay and finish high school. Then, in the early hours of November 16, 2012 at around 1 a.m., Sabrina grabbed a 10-inch serrated kitchen knife, entered Lisa's bedroom, and silently stood by her bed for 15 minutes, watching her sleep. Suddenly, Sabrina began stabbing Lisa repeatedly. Lisa woke up after the first strikes and screamed in pain. Her cries woke her 13-year-old daughter, Megan, who ran to the bedroom and saw Sabrina holding the knife. Terrified, Megan ran to call emergency services, sobbing and screaming that her sister was attacking her mother. When law enforcement arrived, they found Sabrina with several minor cuts on her body, holding a knife and appearing to be in shock. At this time, she followed officers' instructions to drop the knife and put her hands behind her head. She was arrested without resistance but refused to answer any questions once at the police station. During a search of the house, officers discovered Haley, Lisa's youngest daughter, locked in a closet. That night, Kevin was out of town on a business trip, he working as a truck driver. He learned about the incident when the police called him. Shortly after, Kevin called 911 to check on the condition of his daughters. He was told he could come to the police station to pick them up. The next day, Kevin arrived at the police station with an unexpectedly calm demeanor. His unusual composure surprised the officers. They thought they would see a man grieving over his murdered wife, but he seemed unperturbed. Without answering any questions, Kevin quietly took his daughters home, without showing any obvious emotion. Kevin's attitude not only hard to understand the police, but also aroused concern from his and Lisa's relatives and friends. They found it strange that he did not appear sad or depressed after such a great tragedy. Immediately afterwards, Kevin tried to request to visit Sabrina in prison, but this request was denied. When he was not allowed to see Sabrina, Kevin's calm demeanor quickly turned to anger. He returned home with a visibly upset expression. The brutal crime shocked the local media. Lake County Police revealed that Lisa had sustained 178 injuries to her head, neck, torso, and limbs. Although Sabrina was quickly identified as the killer, investigators were initially baffled by her motive for committing such an appalling act. In the 10 months following the murder, detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the evidence. The suspicious relationship between Sabrina and Kevin became the focus of the investigation. Through interviews with those involved, some remarkable information emerged, shedding light on the complex nature of the case. One of the first revelations came from a close friend of Sabrina's. She said that Sabrina had confided that she had allowed Kevin to take nude photos of her in exchange for money. This event immediately raised suspicions about an illicit relationship between Kevin and his adopted daughter. In addition, just a week before the murder, Kevin had contacted a social worker to inform her that he and Lisa were considering divorce. During this conversation, Kevin expressed his intention to retain custody of Sabrina. Another shocking detail came from the testimony of another friend of Sabrina's. This person said that in early October 2012, Kevin asked her to help him find a hitman. This information led investigators to suspect that Kevin might be the mastermind behind the murder. During further investigation, police discovered that Kevin had purchased 2 life insurance policies worth a total of $800,000 in Lisa's name. Just days later, she was declared dead. Immediately after the murder, Kevin began spending lavishly, buying many expensive items. These actions were not only suspicious, but also suggested that Kevin had a financial motive for his wife's death. Initially, Sabrina denied any involvement of Kevin in the case. However, after 9 months in custody, in August 2013, she changed her testimony. Feeling abandoned by her adoptive father and not supported in her difficult situation, Sabrina decided to cooperate with investigators. In her testimony, she provides important details about Kevin's role and motive in killing Lisa, bringing the case to a crucial turning point. Sabrina accused Kevin of orchestrating Lisa's murder and shared specific details about their romantic relationship. She claimed her motive for killing Lisa was her deep love for Kevin and her refusal to share him with anyone else. According to Sabrina, their affair began in March 2012, when Kevin returned home exhausted from long hours of truck driving. Complaining of leg pain, Sabrina offered to massage his feet, which marked the beginning of their growing attraction. By September of that year, they had developed an intimate relationship. Sabrina stated that Lisa never suspected their affair because they behaved carefully. Kevin frequently sent Sabrina messages expressing his lack of love for Lisa and his desire to build a new life with Sabrina. Kevin proposed a plan to Sabrina, promising her a stable future funded by money from Lisa's insurance policies. He assured her that he would provide a house and a car, and suggested she could take Lisa's place as the daughter's mother. Sabrina hesitated, suggesting instead that Kevin file for divorce. However, Kevin rejected this idea, claiming Lisa would take the daughters away from him if they were to separate. He repeatedly joked that a dead Lisa was worth much more than a living one. Gradually, Kevin's plan to eliminate Lisa took shape, and they decided that Sabrina would kill Lisa by stabbing her. To make the murder appear as a failed robbery, Sabrina would also steal some of Lisa's jewelry. Kevin took additional steps to carry out the plan. He purchased the intended for the murder, and researched how to deliver fatal blows to the victim. He also instructed Sabrina to feign mental instability if she were ever arrested. Sabrina revealed that the final turning point occurred on the morning of November 15th, the day before the murder. While driving her to school, Kevin abruptly stopped the car and began crying. He admitted to Sabrina that he had fought with Lisa the previous night and confessed that he would self-harm if Lisa remained alive. Fearing that the man she loved might take his end life, Sabrina resolved to kill Lisa. Based on Sabrina's testimony, investigators decided to arrest Kevin. On August 9, 2013, he was taken into custody. He charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated murder and accessory to murder. In exchange for the possibility of parole, Sabrina agreed to testify against him. Besides, the defense has announced plans to appeal the verdict and intends to focus on expert testimony regarding Sabrina's mental health issues, arguing that her mental disorders were the sole reason she committed the murder. The trial of Kevin began in May 2014, the prosecutor asserting that there was no doubt Sabrina committed the murder. However, he stressed that Kevin was fully aware of what would happen on November 16th and actively assisted Sabrina in planning the crime, which made him equally culpable. When Sabrina testified, she admitted to having an affair with Kevin and explained how they planned the crime together. She claimed the plan was Kevin's idea and said she went through with it only because she loved him and didn't want him to suffer. Sabrina told the jury she wanted justice, emphasizing that she wasn't the sole person involved. The prosecution focused on Kevin's suspicious behavior after Lisa's death, in an attempt to clarify his motives and his unusual demeanor. The police officer who met Kevin the day after the murder testified that Kevin appeared unusually calm and unemotional under such circumstances. A co-worker of Lisa's was also called to testify. She recalled that she brought food to Kevin's home after Lisa's death to comfort the family. However, she noticed that Kevin acted very calmly, seemingly unaffected by the loss. Lisa's co-worker also said that at the funeral, Kevin did not show any signs of grief, which struck her and others as unusual. In addition, a representative from the insurance company was also called to testify. This person revealed that Kevin had contacted them the morning after the murder, asking about the claim procedure from the life insurance policy he had purchased for Lisa not long before. These details were presented by the prosecution to highlight Kevin's cold and calculating nature in the events surrounding Lisa's death. The trial also included testimony from the Lake County medical examiner, who described the horrific injuries Lisa sustained. He detailed 2 fatal wounds, one to her jaw, which severed her carotid artery, and another to her chest. The examiner added that the large number of wounds indicated Lisa resisted fiercely and fought for her life for several minutes before succumbing to her injuries. These gruesome descriptions underscored the brutality of the crime. Although investigators could not provide copies of the text messages exchanged between Sabrina and Kevin, they presented data on the number of messages and calls exchanged. According to the operator, the two exchanged 1,491 text messages and made 78 calls between November 1st and November 16th, 2012. Kevin's lawyer argued that Sabrina should be considered solely responsible for Lisa's murder. He pointed out that investigators had no physical evidence proving Sabrina and Kevin were lovers. Furthermore, there were no specific text messages that directly implicated Kevin in planning Lisa's death. The defense argued that the prosecution's case rested entirely on Sabrina's testimony, which secured her a reduced sentence in return. The lawyer asserted that Kevin should be released, claiming the charges against him were baseless. He argued that Sabrina killed her adoptive mother not because of Kevin's influence, but because Lisa, 2 weeks earlier, had demanded Sabrina move out of their house by January 1st, 2013. Meanwhile, Kevin refused to testify in court. Next, after a 9.5-hour hearing on June 11th, the jury found Kevin Knofel guilty on all 11 charges. On August 6, 2014, Judge Joseph Gibson sentenced Kevin to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This means Kevin will be eligible for parole in 2044, at the age of 73. After the trial, in which Sabrina gave detailed testimony about her role in Lisa's murder, the judges found her guilty of premeditated murder with aggravating circumstances. During the trial, Sabrina's defense attorney emphasized that she had admitted her guilt. Sabrina also confirmed this admission during a hearing in August 2014, expressing remorse for her actions. On September 29, 2014, at the age of 19, Sabrina Zunick was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This means she will be eligible for parole in 2042, when she turns 47. Sabrina broke down in tears upon hearing the verdict. In explaining the sentence, the judge stated that the only reason Sabrina was being considered for parole was her cooperation with investigators. However, the judge also noted that, although Kevin manipulated and used Sabrina to carry out his plot, her brutal actions went far beyond original plan. In addition to the life sentence, the court ordered Sabrina to pay $6 million in compensation to Lisa's 2 biological daughters, Megan and Haley Knofel, to help them overcome the emotional and financial losses caused by their mother's death. Currently, Sabrina is serving her sentence at the Dayton Correctional Facility, a women's detention center in Ohio. The prison, established in 1987, is known for its rehabilitation and education programs designed to help inmates rebuild their lives. Sabrina will spend most of her life in prison, facing the consequences of her actions and the indelible memories of a murder that changed many lives forever. Case 3. The case of Doreen Erbert. Doreen Erbert was born on November 29, 1952, in California, into a family of 5 children. From a young age, she was a kind and positive person, always looking for ways to help others. After graduating from college, Doreen moved to San Francisco and began working as a physical therapist. At the age of 24, she met Michael Venice, a man who worked in a factory near Doreen's clinic. After getting to know each other for a while, Doreen and Michael started dating, and a few months later, they decided to get married. In 1976, they had a son named Paul. Initially, Michael and Doreen's life was very happy, but after having a child, their relationship began to have problems. After about a year, Doreen and Michael decided to divorce. Their son was raised by Doreen, while Michael was still allowed to visit him regularly. Despite the divorce, Michael and Doreen maintained a cordial relationship. A year later, Doreen met a man named Charles. They began dating, got married, and decided to move to San Jose, settling in a quiet residential area. In 1979, their daughter Deanna was born. Charles, like his wife, dreamed of having a large family. He was overjoyed when their daughter was born. However, tragedy struck the family in February 1980. 4-year-old Paul climbed over the fence around the pool and fell into the water. Doreen, who was home at the time, realized what had happened too late. She pulled her son out of the water and called an ambulance. Paul was taken to the hospital and put on life support. However, after 10 days, doctors concluded that there was no chance of survival. The decision was made to disconnect the boy from the machines. Doreen became depressed and devastated, blaming herself constantly, even though the police concluded that it was not her fault. However, Doreen's young daughter Deanna helped her through this pain. For years after the tragic event, Doreen's family finally had some good news. Doreen and Charles had been trying for another child, although they had failed twice due to interrupted pregnancies. But Doreen finally became pregnant again, and this time, everything went well. They were expecting a new baby boy, due in early November. A few days before Doreen was to be admitted to the hospital, her family decided to join in the Halloween festivities. On the evening of October 31st, all the neighbors decorated their houses and handed out candy to the children. Deanna, who was 4 years old at the time, was very keen to join in, and her parents couldn't say no. Although Doreen was 9 months pregnant, she went trick-or-treating with her daughter while Charles stayed home, handing out candy to other children. The mother and daughter returned home just before 9 p.m. Charles informed his wife that they were running out of candy and that he planned to drive to the nearest store to buy more. He left the house around 8:50 p.m. and returned about 15 minutes later. As he approached the house, Charles noticed that the front door was slightly ajar, which he found strange. When he entered, he found his wife lying on the hallway floor, surrounded by a large amount of blood. Doreen showed no signs of life, and Charles immediately called 911. Shortly thereafter, he noticed the body of their unborn child in the living room. Charles was in a state of shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. Initially, he thought that Doreen might have had a miscarriage, but he quickly realized that the situation was much worse. Beside the child was a human hand, and Charles immediately understood that it was Doreen's hand. When Charles realized that his family was being attacked, he began searching for Deanna, fearing she might be in danger. He saw so much blood on the floor that he slipped and fell while running through the house. Luckily, Deanna was still alive, but she was hiding behind the sofa in the living room out of fear. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics found Doreen and discovered that she had a weak pulse. They rushed her to the hospital, but unfortunately, doctors were unable to save her, and she died in the ambulance. Tragically, Doreen's unborn child also died from the brutal attack. Medical experts examined Doreen's body and concluded that she had been repeatedly hit with a long, sharp object like a sword or machete. The police investigated the house and found a horrifying scene that looked like something out of a horror movie. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, and even on the ceiling. Several police officers sought psychological help after witnessing the horrific scene. Investigators searched the entire house, but found no perpetrator or any clues about the attacker. While investigating the murder, police found significant evidence outside the house. They saw bloody footprints on the sidewalk and suspected that the killer had left the scene in a vehicle. While searching for more clues, police found a blood-stained wolf mask on the front lawn. They believed the mask might have belonged to the killer, as family members said they had never owned it. The mask was sent to a lab for analysis. Police then spoke to Deanna, the only surviving child from the murder. She was in shock but still able to talk. She told police that after her father left for the store, someone knocked on their door. Her mother, Doreen, opened the door and saw a man wearing a wolf mask holding a knife. The attacker said, "I'm going to kill you now." Doreen screamed, telling her daughter to run away from the house immediately. Deanna hid behind the sofa, but could not remember what happened next. It was not until her father found her that Deanna calmed down. Unfortunately, Deanna was unable to provide any further information about the attacker as he had hidden his identity behind the wolf mask. Investigators initially suspected Doreen's husband, Charles, as the prime suspect. Since he had been out of the house around the time Doreen was attacked, they were suspicious of his trip to the store. When Charles returned, he had stepped in blood several times and even fallen, ending up covered in blood, but the police did not know whether he had done this on purpose to explain the blood stains on his clothes. However, detectives found several problems with this theory. First, Charles's shoes did not match the ones that left bloody footprints on the road. Second, there were no traces of blood found in Charles's car, nor were there any other shoe prints. To clarify the information, the police went to the store that Charles visited and confirmed the time he was there. The employee confirmed that Charles had bought candy at the store that evening. This indicated that he did not have enough time to commit the murder. Surveillance footage also confirmed that Charles was at the store. Therefore, the police no longer considered him the prime suspect. First, they asked Charles if he could think of anyone who might want to harm his family, and Charles immediately mentioned Doreen's ex-husband, Michael. Charles said that initially, Michael maintained a normal relationship with his ex-wife. However, things changed after the death of their son. Michael believed that Doreen had intentionally killed the child to cut off all contact with him. Michael even filed a civil lawsuit against her, but he lost the case. Doreen thought that there was a reason behind the change in Michael's behavior. He had a history of depression after the birth of his son and was distant from both his wife and child. All of this made Michael introverted and caused communication problems. These problems became one of the main reasons why Michael and Doreen decided to divorce. Later, when Doreen married Charles, Michael began to harbor resentment and hostility towards her. This became even more apparent when Michael began to truly hate his ex-wife. Later, Michael lost his job at the place where he had spent most of his life. This created many negative issues in his life. After hearing all this information, the detectives decided to go to Michael's house and talk to him. Although Charles's testimony was not enough to make Michael the prime suspect, since he lived only 2 miles from Doreen's house, they decided to visit him immediately. Around midnight, the police arrived at Michael's house and saw a pickup truck parked near the garage. When they shined a flashlight inside the car, they saw what appeared to be blood on the steering wheel and keys. They then knocked on Michael's door, but no one answered. The lights were on inside the house, and the police could hear water running inside, which made them suspect that Michael might be destroying evidence or washing bloody clothes. So they continued knocking. Michael finally opened the door. He remained calm even after being informed of his ex-wife's murder. Michael answered all the police's questions calmly and allowed them into his home without a warrant. According to him, he had gone to the store during the day, returned home, and had not left since. Michael even signed a form giving the police permission to search his home. As he reached for a pen to sign, the investigators noticed a deep cut on his right hand. Michael explained that he had accidentally cut himself earlier while carving pumpkins for Halloween. However, the police were skeptical. The wound was still fresh, and blood was still oozing from it. As several police officers began searching Michael's home, he was asked to go upstairs with an officer to show his identification. However, when he entered the bedroom, Michael's actions aroused suspicion as he appeared to be reaching under the bed. The officer asked him to move away and found a loaded gun holster under the headboard. After discovering the weapon, the police took Michael downstairs to meet with other officers. Their colleagues discovered other suspicious evidence. They found drops of blood on the floor, which led them to the garage, where there was a washing machine and bloody clothing. Based on this evidence, the police had enough to arrest Michael. Detectives and forensic experts investigated Michael's home, looking for more evidence that could connect him to the murder. police are awaiting the results of blood analysis and have discovered other grisly signs. Initially, the police discovered an empty box containing an 18-inch machete. Medical experts determined that the shape of the knife matched the wound on Doreen's body perfectly. In addition, the police found 2 makeshift coffins in Michael's home, raising suspicions that they might be for Doreen and Charles. They also found mortuary bags, the type typically used by paramedics, in Michael's home. The presence of these items made the police question Michael's innocence. After compiling all this evidence, the police decided to apply for a warrant for Michael's arrest. Without a warrant, they could only detain him for a limited time. However, the judge said that the evidence they had gathered was not strong enough, and that there were many unknowns. As a result, Michael was released, and he was freed. 3 days into the investigation, detectives received lab results. The results showed that there were 2 different blood types at the crime scene. The majority of the blood matched Doreen's blood type, while a small amount matched Michael's. This indicated that Michael had injured himself during the attack on his ex-wife. The judge quickly issued an arrest warrant, and Michael was charged with the murder of his ex-wife and her unborn child. Detectives continued their investigation and found additional evidence linking Michael to the crime. When they spoke to acquaintances of Michael, they learned that he owned the wolf mask found near Doreen's house. They also found a photo of Michael wearing the mask at a previous Halloween party. To further solidify the case, police found the mask Michael wore in the photo in his home. Michael's trial began in July 1988, for years after Doreen's murder. He initially admitted to the crime, but later changed his story. He did not deny the murder, but claimed he was innocent by reason of mental illness. A psychologist assigned to monitor him concluded that he did have serious mental illness. According to Michael, he became insane on Halloween night when he saw other children trick-or-treating. This reminded him of Paul's death and caused him to collapse. He said that he went to Doreen's house that night with a machete. When she opened the door, he said, "You killed my son," and that he intended to kill her. She immediately recognized the man behind the mask, shouted at her daughter to run, and the next second, Michael attacked her. However, Michael's story had one twist. He said he did not know Doreen was pregnant. This raised suspicions as all her friends claimed that she was clearly pregnant before the tragedy. They even joked that Doreen had become even bigger because of her pregnancy. The murder of Doreen and her unborn child came to light at a trial. The prosecution argued that was fully aware of his actions and had planned to kill his ex-wife and her husband. He had told his friends about this desire, and detectives found evidence that he had made elaborate preparations, including 2 coffins and body bags, in his home. However, it appears that he changed his mind and did not carry out his murder plan. This led the prosecution to suspect that he may have feared being caught or discovered. One of the key witnesses in the case was Doreen's daughter, Deanna. She was only 9 years old at the time and still remembers what happened. After a year of investigation and trial, Michael was convicted of murder. He was sentenced to death, but before his execution, the state of California imposed a moratorium on executions. Therefore, Michael remains in custody, and his sentence may not be carried out anytime soon. The case left a deep mark on Deanna's life. Years later, she was still haunted by the horrific memories of her mother's death. However, she decided to forgive Michael and try to forget the past. Case 4. The case of Ryan Widmer. Sarah and Ryan Widmer met at a favorite coffee shop. Ryan ordered a cup of coffee while Sarah was waiting in line and happened to see a book on his table that she had just finished reading. Their shared interest in literature opened up their first conversation. Gradually, they spent many hours discussing common topics such as books, movies, music, and daily routines. Through the conversation, they discovered that they both loved nature, travel, and animals. After each meeting, their relationship became closer and more trusting of each other. Their understanding and trust grew more and more. Finally, their relationship developed into love. After a few months of dating, Ryan proposed to Sarah at a romantic sunset at the same coffee shop where they met. Sarah felt very happy and agreed to the proposal. The young couple planned their wedding and found a 2-story house in Hamilton. Finally, on April 10, 2008, their wedding took place. They chose a small church to hold the wedding ceremony with the participation of close friends and beloved family. Everything, even the smallest details, was planned by Sarah in a special way. On the important day, Sarah looked gorgeous and beautiful, and Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding and the party, The couple decided to go on a honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks exploring the beautiful paradise and enjoying time together. At this time, they were deeply in love and had already planned for the future, dreaming of having children. On the evening of Monday, August 11, 2008, after finishing work at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at a cafe. They had dinner and talked happily. After that, they walked home. Sarah packed her groceries and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a headache pill. He gave her a bath, and they finished watching their favorite TV show together. Sarah went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, folded her clothes neatly, prepared a towel, lit a scented candle, and turned on her favorite music. Ryan pressed the button on the TV remote, pausing a few times on the football game. He lay on the couch for no more than 10 minutes. He called his wife, but Sarah didn't hear him, so he slowly went upstairs. In the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV and called Sarah again. There was silence. In a panic, he went into the bathroom, where he found Sarah lying face down in the bathtub. Ryan unplugged the bathtub and took out his phone to call 911. At 10:49 p.m., under the direction of the police, Ryan finally got Sarah out of the bathtub and performed CPR on her. Within 6 minutes, an ambulance and police were at Ryan's home. An initial inspection of the scene caught the attention of the police. The bathroom was dry and clean, with no signs of water or scattered objects. Sarah was lying on the bedroom floor, naked, her skin dry. Only her wet hair suggested she had drowned. A paramedic performed CPR when there was no pulse. A pinkish-white fluid flowed from Sarah's nose and mouth. 2 attempts to intubate Sarah while she was lying on the bedroom floor were unsuccessful. Sarah was then rushed to the emergency room, and 2 more attempts were made to bring her heart rate back to normal with a defibrillator, both unsuccessful. During this time, Ryan remained by his wife's side. Within 20 minutes of arriving at the hospital, they attempted to revive Sarah, but at 11:41 p.m., an emergency room doctor pronounced her dead. Ryan knelt in the hospital hallway and cried. Relatives and friends of the couple could not have imagined that just 4 months after their wedding, a tragedy would strike that would shock the entire city and make Ryan the prime suspect in Sarah's death. When the police questioned him at the hospital, Ryan's initial statements raised suspicions. Ryan claimed that he and his wife had been home that night. They had dined out, returned home, and watched TV. Then, because his wife had a headache, Ryan gave her painkillers and led her to the bathroom. Some details in Ryan's statement did not match the emergency call records. The victim had collapsed face down while Ryan said his wife was lying face up. This discrepancy made the police question Ryan's statement. Ryan was deeply shocked by what had happened. He kept calling Sarah's name. Under pressure from the police, Ryan was forced to participate in the investigation to find out information about Sarah's death. He agreed to allow his house to be searched. Analysis of the medication Sarah had taken showed that it was a common painkiller commonly used to treat headaches and migraines. However, she had been taking a course of medication that altered her hormones and caused her to fall into an uncontrollable sleep. After searching the house, traces of blood were found on the carpet. During the investigation, the police discovered several signs that made them suspicious of Ryan's story. When they arrived at the scene, the bathtub and tiles were dry with no signs of water. No wet items, clothing, or other items were found in the house that could have soaked up the water. The autopsy revealed that Sarah had several injuries to her body, including bruises to her head, neck, armpits, and lips. However, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. Sarah's fingernails were intact, not broken or chipped. This does not fit the theory that Sarah was murdered after a struggle. Sarah's autopsy, conducted by Dr. Russell Appointment Grove, showed that she died of drowning. During the autopsy, experts also discovered multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of her neck and bruises on her head. These injuries were determined to have occurred before her death. However, the cause of these injuries is still unknown. Toxicology tests ruled out the presence of illegal substances or alcohol in Sarah's blood. This makes the question of what caused her death even more difficult to answer. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. The charge was based on the emergency call, a scene that did not match the reality, and the injuries on Sarah's body. This was enough to charge him with murdering his wife. Ryan and Sarah were very much in love, as friends and neighbors confirmed. They never argued or fought in public and always planned their lives. What caused Sarah's death? In March 2009, The first trial began with emergency line officer Ron Cronenberger taking the stand. He described the phone conversation with Ryan as calm and relaxed. However, Ron Cronenberger also said that Ryan appeared to be just blowing into the tube, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that the information from the 911 call, the scene, and Sarah's injuries were enough to prove that Ryan killed her by forcing her underwater and drowning her in the bathtub. The main piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police examined the bathtub for fingerprints and found what they believed to be human handprints. These were located closer to the middle of the bathtub. Using a reflective ultraviolet photographic process, fingerprints and stains were found on the bathtub. A fingerprint was found on the forearm, and hair follicle testing determined that it was left by an adult male, but the age of the fingerprint could not be determined. The police called in a medical expert, who testified that falling asleep and dying in a bathtub was unlikely unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to the expert, the sensation of water on the face could have awakened the person or triggered a reflex response to the airway. Otherwise, the reduction in oxygen in the muscles would have likely awakened the victim. In addition, the pathologist who performed the autopsy was called to testify. He stated that if Sarah had a dry body and wet hair, a likely explanation would be that her head had been pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. She could have been pushed forward or backward, in running water or in a full bathtub. According to the prosecution's case, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and on that basis, he should be convicted. Ryan's defense attorney argued that he was innocent, and that he had no motive to kill Sarah. The attorney said that if there had been a violent struggle, as the prosecution argued, there would have been evidence of that. However, there were no injuries on Ryan, and Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. The attorney said that the injuries found on Sarah were the result of prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and multiple attempts at intubation that night in the house, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital itself. At the defense's request, a second autopsy was performed. Dr. Werner Spitz performed a second autopsy, and again confirmed that the cause of death was drowning. He observed injuries to her neck, arms, upper lip, skull, a lacerated liver, and bleeding from her neck, but could not determine whether these injuries were due to CPR. Those present argued that the paramedics had been trying to resuscitate Sarah for about 45 minutes, and that the deep bleeding inside Sarah's neck could have been caused by N4 being inserted into the area, because paramedics could not reach the veins in her arms. Instead of ruling it a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled Sarah's death undetermined. The defense said her skin was dry because it dries faster than her hair. They also said that when Ryan found his wife unconscious, he pushed the drain in the bathtub, tried to help her, and called emergency services. This chain of events explains why her body was drier than expected. The water had drained out of the bathtub even before Ryan called 911. However, it is not yet known whether the jury's verdict would have changed if they had received credible evidence that Sarah's medical condition could have caused the drowning. The official reason for denying a new trial was that the jury had made errors in its investigation. Ryan was surprised when Jennifer Cruz came to the prosecutor's office to testify about Ryan's guilt. She said she was friends with Ryan, and that he had been in regular contact with her by phone or email. According to Jennifer's testimony, he called on October 26, 2009, at 11:09 p.m. In a very upset voice, he told her that he had beaten Sarah in the living room on the day of her death. Sarah had discovered his infidelity and had seen inappropriate photos. They had argued for a long time, first downstairs and then in the bedroom. Ryan pushed her into the bathroom and left his wife there without checking to see what had happened to her. He was angry, and after calming down, he found Sarah floating in a bathtub full of water. To cover his tracks, he wiped up the water on the bathroom floor with a towel and came up with a plan for the accident. Ryan's attorneys worked hard to prove his innocence. They tried to throw out Jennifer's testimony because they thought it was unreasonable. One obvious example was that no towels were found in the house, including the dryer, and there was no evidence of infidelity in their marriage. The family had no financial problems and never argued. Ryan was described by friends as a kind and helpful person who never showed anger. Ryan would not benefit from his wife's death because he did not have a life insurance policy. Before the third trial began, Jennifer was discredited and barred from testifying. The call that Ryan allegedly confessed to her was not authenticated. In January 2011, a trial was held based on new evidence. The defense argued that Sarah had underlying medical conditions that could have caused her to suddenly lose consciousness and drown. Several medical experts testified in support of the defense, stating that some heart or neurological defect could have led to the loss of consciousness. However, the state's medical experts disagreed with this assessment. The trial also revealed additional details about Sarah's health and daily routine. Her co-workers testified that she often slept in her car before going to work at the dental office due to severe allergies and stomach aches. On the day of her death, Sarah had complained of headaches and stomach aches to her dentist boss. That evening, Sarah talked to a friend and mentioned her headaches and neck pain, and her friend said she looked extremely tired. Her ability to fall asleep quickly led her friends to think she might have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness. People with narcolepsy often have difficulty staying awake and need to take frequent naps to cope. However, Sarah's mother, Ruth N. Stewart, disputed this idea when she testified as a prosecution witness at trial. She claimed that she had never seen her daughter have sleep problems and described Sarah as a healthy and active child with a regular daily routine. Sarah's medical records also supported this claim. As a dental hygienist, Sarah had undergone regular checkups, and her last checkup showed no signs of health problems. In addition, other witnesses who claimed Sarah was excessively sleepy gave unconvincing testimony. In cases where a person tries to strangle another from behind, the victim often suffers defensive injuries to the arms and legs, as well as injuries to the small bones in the neck. However, Sarah's autopsy did not show any such injuries. The defense urged the jury to consider all the facts surrounding the case, that Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. Once again, the defense was defeated. After about 12 hours of deliberations, Ryan was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury based their decision on the lack of water on Sarah's body and around the bathtub, and that Ryan's call to 911 was staged. One juror felt that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the main reasons he believed Ryan was guilty. When the autopsy photos were shown, they felt that Ryan was completely unresponsive. Ryan did not take a stand, although he told the court after the verdict was announced he loved his wife. He did not hurt her. Ryan remains in custody, awaiting a federal court ruling that could determine his parole status. After 14 years in prison, his first chance for parole will be in July 2025. With each passing year, Ryan holds out hope that the next year will bring him freedom. He continues to maintain his innocence and profess his love for Sarah, insisting that he did not harm her. Ryan's chances of parole in 2025 appear slim, as the parole board tends to favor inmates who show remorse. Since Ryan has always maintained his innocence, he could face an uphill battle for parole. Case 5. The case of Angela Wilder. Angela Wilder was born in 1985 in San Diego, California, USA, as the youngest daughter in her family. She had an older sister named Cree, and they were very close. Both of her parents were in the military, so the family often moved. This often leads to tension within their families. Eventually, Angela's parents decided to divorce while she was still in school. Angela's mother met someone new, and they moved with him to Phoenix City, Alabama, a small town with a population of 40,000. After the move, her mother left the military. The family became regular attendees of the local church, as they had always been religious. In high school, Angela met Christopher Jackson, and they quickly developed feelings for each other. They began dating, marking Angela's first love. However, the relationship was short-lived because Angela prioritized her education. She needed to move to attend the University of South Alabama. Christopher found the breakup difficult as he genuinely loved Angela, but he didn't want to stand in the way of her dreams. In 2004, Angela met a preacher's son named Daniel. At that time, she was still in university, but quickly became involved in a relationship with him. Before long, Angela became pregnant, and the couple decided to marry. They had a wedding and soon welcomed a daughter. However, financial struggles and work stress took a toll on their relationship. Angela's feelings for Daniel faded quickly, and she realized he wasn't the partner she wanted for life. After 2 years of marriage, Angela decided to file for divorce and seek full custody of their daughter. After graduating from university, Angela returned to her hometown and lived in her parents' house. Her mother and sister supported her by helping take care of her daughter. During one visit to the local church, she met Richie Wilder, a former schoolmate. Richie has a hot temper and often causes trouble, Many people believe that the reason is because he was raised in an unhappy family. His father was an alcoholic who often mistreated his mother, who couldn't do anything about it. While many people avoided Richie, Angela believed she saw a different side of him and thought she could bring out his best qualities. Richie and Angela formed a close relationship, and they started dating. Angela mentioned that Richie got along well with her daughter and treated her kindly. However, Angela's relatives quickly observed negative changes in her behavior at the start of her relationship with Richie. They noticed that Angela became quieter, more difficult to understand, and more stressed. Despite everyone's worry and advice to keep her distance from him, but Angela did not heed their warnings. In January 2009, Richie and Angela got married. Richie took Angela and her daughter to the family home, and they moved to the city of Minot, North Dakota. It's a small town with about 40,000 people, a very tight-knit local community, and includes armed forces facilities. There is also a military base where Richie was stationed. In 2010, Angela found out she was pregnant. During that time, she started working at a supply store on the military base. Some people close to Richie and Angela noticed issues in their relationship. Angela's coworkers noticed that Richie was often rude and aggressive towards her. He often insults Angela and makes her cry, even though she is very vulnerable. She later revealed that he was not only cruel to her, but also to her daughter. It was discovered that he regularly abused the whole family, but did so without leaving any marks. This abuse continued for years. The couple had 2 children, a boy and a girl. When Angela reached her breaking point, she officially reported the violence to the police. When the investigation started, all of Richie's colleagues and the military base management supported him. He convinced people that his wife, Angela, was unstable and had mental health issues. Angela lacked solid evidence of her husband's mistreatment, and the backing Richie received from the military base management helped cover up the case. Despite this, Angela was determined to end the relationship while keeping custody of their children. While trying to prove Richie was cruel, Angela herself faced accusations from him. Richie alleged that Angela had anger management issues, and he proved it thanks to support of his colleagues. Ultimately, Angela, a mother of 2, was referred to an anger management specialist and prescribed sedatives. Friends familiar with Angela insisted she never had such issues and no one had seen her act aggressively. They believed Richie orchestrated the situation to discredit her with the authorities. However, Angela still followed the treatment regimen with the aim of understanding and dealing with her condition. Around 2 weeks after, Richie and Angela reconciled, but peace in their relationship was short-lived. Angela soon filed for divorce, and their marriage ended in May 2012. Richie faced a military tribunal. Despite opposition from the officers at the military base, Angela succeeded in proving the violence against her and the children. Due to uncovered family issues and deceit, Richie was dismissed from service. Angela did not want to share custody and planned to move with the children back to Alabama. This decision angered Richie. He wanted to maintain a relationship with the children, visit them regularly, and have them over on weekends. This disagreement led to arguments between the ex-spouses. Richie consistently opposed the idea and even threatened Angela. During the World Cup, Angela confided her plan to her loved ones, and despite opposition, she went through with her decision and moved to another state. Besides, Richie also relocated to a nearby city within the state and began working as a junior staff member at a hospital. In this new city, he met Cynthia Becker, a kindergarten teacher. They began dating, and their relationship quickly progressed. Eventually, they got married and started a family. Despite this, Richie remained troubled by the custody arrangement of his children, as his ex-wife, Angela, had been granted full custody. He maintained contact with his son and daughter primarily through phone calls, but the disputes between them persisted. Despite everything that happened, Angela seemed genuinely happy. She had started dating Christopher Jackson again, her first boyfriend from high school. Previously, they had broken up so she could pursue her education. After many years of separation, the love between them burned stronger than ever. Angela told her family that she had finally found someone with whom she felt warmth, and they had a son. Angela and Christopher were planning their wedding, and she was pregnant again. She had no idea she would soon have to fight for her life. On the evening of November 13, 2015, Christopher went to work for his night shift at a local 24-hour Walmart. He didn't have a car, so Angela usually picked him up after his shift at 7 a.m. However, on that night, Angela stopped responding to his calls and messages. They typically stayed in touch during his shifts. But communication ended around 3 a.m. when Angela texted that she heard a noise outside and felt she was being followed. Christopher only saw the message 2 hours later because he was busy with work. Concerned, he tried calling Angela, but she didn't answer. He assumed she might have fallen asleep or gone to a clinic in the morning for pregnancy tests. But when Angela didn't arrive to pick him up as planned, Christopher began to worry then. At the time, Angela was enrolled in a nursing program at Minot University and had recently discovered she was pregnant again. Christopher thought she might have gone to the hospital if she felt unwell or if their son was sick, which might explain why she wasn't responding to his calls and messages. Even though he understood her possible situation, the strangeness didn't stop there. Normally, she would immediately call Christopher in such a case. If he didn't answer, she will at least send a text message to inform him of any problems. So, he was confused about why Angela suddenly stopped all communication, which was not like her. Christopher kept calling, but his calls always went to voicemail. Too worried, he rushed back home. Then he knocked on the bedroom window where Angela might be sleeping. However, when he saw the back door, he realized something terrible might have happened that night. There were signs of a break-in, as if the door had been forcefully knocked down. Christopher looked inside and called Angela's name several times, but there was no response. He didn't enter the house, fearing something bad might be inside. Instead, he immediately called 911 to report the situation. He explained that Angela hadn't answered his phone for several hours and didn't pick him up from work as usual. He asked the dispatcher if he could go inside to find out what happened, but the dispatcher advised against it, suggesting there might be a criminal inside waiting for another victim. Christopher was instructed to wait outside for the police. He urged them to hurry because Angela was pregnant, and he was concerned for her and their unborn child's safety. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. During this time, Christopher waited outside for them. He could only enter the house once they arrived. From the outside, everything appeared normal, the furniture was in place, and everything was clean and tidy. However, Angela still did not respond to his calls. When the officers approached the main bedroom and opened the door, the reason for Angela's silence became clear. One officer turned on the light and discovered a horrifying scene. There was so much blood that the bed linen items were all mixed into a red mess. On the bed lay 30-year-old Angela, showing no signs of life. She was stabbed multiple times. During the attack, Angela's 2-year-old son was in the house. He remained silent, and no sounds came from his room. Christopher, alarmed, rushed to check on him, but thankfully he was just sleeping and unharmed, as he was not the killer's target. The other children were with their grandmother that day. Christopher immediately accused Richie of being the one who killed Angela, having no other suspects for who could have harmed Angela so brutally. She had no other enemies. After marrying Richie, Angela had a daughter and a son, who were 10 and 4 years old at the time of the tragedy. Although the judge awarded Angela full custody, but Richie had visitation rights and to be involved in their children's lives. Richie took the kids away for the weekend and intended to contest custody so they could live with him forever. Angela opposed this due to his cruel nature, leading to constant arguments between them. Later, there is evidence that Richie may have been involved in the murder of his ex-wife, Angela. For example, Crystal, Angela's sister, informed the police that Richie had aggressively entered Angela's house after their divorce and said that if he wanted, he could reach her. However, Richie never used physical force in public, so these claims remained unproven. The forensic expert concluded that by the time Angela was found, she had been killed with over 1,000 stab wounds. She had fought desperately against the attack, as evidenced by the cuts on her hands, likely from trying to defend herself. The police quickly observed that valuables in the house were still intact, indicating that the attacker was not motivated by theft, but by a desire to kill Angela. Investigating her personal life, the police noted that Angela and Richie had a hostile relationship and were frequently in conflict. Richie had been discharged from military service for violence against Angela and their children. Relatives of Angela confirmed that the relationship between her and Richie was very strained. Angela avoided interacting with Richie when he came to pick up the children, so Christopher usually handled the exchanges. Christopher detailed the issues between Angela and Richie, expressing his dislike for Richie's aggressive behavior, although he managed to avoid direct conflicts with him. After gathering all the information, the detectives focused on Richie, who became the main suspect. Richie agreed to speak with them and firmly denied any involvement in the incident. Since the evidence collected had not yet been analyzed, they had nothing to confront him with, so they continued questioning him. Richie provided an alibi, stating that he left work around 7 p.m. and went home. His new wife, Cynthia, confirmed that Richie was with her at home the entire night. However, the investigators noticed several wounds on Richie's hands and face that resembled scratches, which could be defensive wounds inflicted by Angela during a struggle. Richie claimed these injuries were from playing with a child. The detectives doubted his explanation and decided to review CCTV footage from the area, requesting the recordings. After reviewing the footage from the cameras that might have captured the criminal arriving to commit the murder, Richie's car was not seen. However, this didn't mean much as the attacker could have gone unnoticed. The police collected DNA samples from Richie for testing and obtained a warrant to search his car. The car's interior was extremely clean, except for a small red stain on the front passenger seat door. Forensic experts collected these materials for examination. Suspicions about Richie increased. He was asked to take a polygraph test. Although a polygraph is not admissible in court, detectives wanted to observe his reaction and behavior during the test. Initially, Richie agreed, but he never showed up for it. Despite his refusal, this was insufficient to arrest him or press charges, so investigators decided to look into his background more thoroughly. All the employees at the hospital where Richie works were aware of the investigation. Despite this, he was fired a few weeks after the investigation started. A complaint was filed against him for pushing an elderly patient. Richie later justified his actions by claiming nervous tension caused by pressure from police officers. Meanwhile, detectives were gathering more evidence of Richie's involvement in Angela's murder. DNA traces were found that matched samples from the suspected killer, Richie, suggesting that he was the one Angela had fought off in her bedroom. Richie declared that maybe the recently time he picked up the kids, he accidentally left a trace of DNA there. However, this explanation seemed implausible since the last meeting was with Christopher, and he and Angela had no contact with each other. The examination confirmed that the drop of blood in Richie's car belonged to Angela's. Richie claimed it might have been from when they were still together, as Angela allegedly had blood pressure issues and occasionally had nosebleeds. However, the blood appeared very fresh. His explanation seemed like attempts to mislead the investigation, revealed many contradictions in his testimony. The police finally arrested Richie for Angela's murder, but he denied all the charges. In March, the police received an unexpected confession from Richie. He mentioned that he had no criminal record and a good background, claiming he wasn't guilty of the crime. However, he was willing to talk about who was actually involved in Angela's death. According to him, during one of their meetings, Christopher proposed an unusual deal. Richie recounted that Christopher suspected Angela of cheating and was convinced she was seeing her lover while he worked night shifts. Christopher suggested catching Angela in the act, which would also give Richie leverage in a custody battle for the children. Richie agreed, and that evening, he called Christopher to pick him up from work. Richie explained that he and Christopher went to Angela's house to confront her and her lover. When they entered the bedroom, they only found Angela, who was sleeping peacefully. Despite this, Christopher unexpectedly drew a knife they had brought for self-defense and attacked her, stabbing her multiple times. Angela woke up and tried to defend herself, but she couldn't. Richie confessed that he was in shock, but he unable to help her. Richie watched the attack, but was too stunned and unable to intervene. Afterward, Christopher warned him not to tell anyone, threatening to kill him if he did. Once Richie regained his senses, he checked Angela's pulse by touching her neck. Suddenly, Angela made a final attempt to fight back, grabbing him with her hands and scratching him before collapsing once more. Terrified by Christopher's warning, fled the scene, and remained silent until the situation directly affected him. Richie said he did not tell this story during his first meeting with the police because he was scared. He stated that Christopher kept threatening him and his family, but no one believed this claim Richie's. The police reviewed the store's surveillance footage and confirmed that Christopher was working the night shift during Angela's death. He was on Marta Street, visible to cameras from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., and couldn't leave his job. Moreover, Christopher confirmed that he took a taxi home in the morning, and this information was recorded on his mobile phone. Once Richie realized how absurd his story sounded, he began telling more incredible tales. He finally claimed to have witnessed Angela being murdered by a killer wearing a black mask, allegedly hired by an enemy of Angela. He even tried to accuse some of his fellow inmates of attacking Angela, but he couldn't clearly explain the incident of that night. He claimed the killers were overwhelmed with guilt and confessed to him during a private conversation. However, all of this turned out to be fabricated. It was revealed that Richie even paid $500,000 to a prisoner to plead guilty on his behalf. When no one agreed to take the blame, Richie attempted to pay a similar amount to arrange for the murder of Christopher to keep him silent. Fortunately, his fellow inmate ignored this offer. One night, while Richie was in custody awaiting trial, correctional officers noticed him acting suspiciously. After searching his cell, they found a broom handle sharpened on one end like a spear. It was clear he was planning an escape and had made a weapon for this purpose. Fortunately, the plan was discovered in time, and the guards began to watch him more closely. As a result, he was never able to carry out any of his plans. Richie's behavior in prison was considered during his trial, and in addition to the murder charges, he faced punishment for attempting to escape. The trial for Angela Wilder's murder began in December 2016. Despite having enough evidence to convict Richie, forensic experts presented the accusations. Angela's body was found on the morning of November 14, 2015. She was lying face up on the bed, covered in blood. A drop of blood found in Richie's car matched the DNA of Angela. Additionally, DNA under her fingernails matched Richie's, providing irrefutable evidence of his guilt. Although Richie's lawyer tried his best to defend his client, the case documents provided by the prosecutor's office were too convincing. Consequently, the jury found Richie Wilder guilty of premeditated murder. A woman who knew Richie well insisted from the start that the police had made a mistake. She argued that they only focused on Richie due to past conflicts, overlooking other possibilities. She maintained that Richie couldn't be guilty because he had spent the night with her from November 13th to 14th. She believes that he is a trustworthy person who loves children and does not commit domestic violence. However, evidence clearly confirmed his guilt. Richie Wilder received a life sentence in prison without the chance of parole and an extra 5 years for trying to escape. Overnight, Angela's children lost both parents. Richie's new wife, Cynthia, who had hoped for a happy family, could no longer be with her husband. After the trial, Cynthia expressed her disbelief, considering it an injustice. She insisted that Richie was wrongly framed and imprisoned. The case might have ended there, but a friend of Cynthia's kept an eye out. Cynthia frequently talked to this friend after Richie was imprisoned, often steering the conversation towards Angela's murder and the situation. During one discussion, Cynthia mentioned that Angela was supposed to be shot with a gun her husband had, but he changed his mind and used a knife instead. This raised suspicions for Cynthia's friend. It seemed that Cynthia felt no pity at all, and at the same time she knew more than she was letting on about the murder. The police asked this friend of Cynthia's to let them wiretap his chat meeting next with Cynthia, and he agreed. Later, during a heartfelt conversation, he asked why Cynthia was so upset about the crime involving Angela. She clarified that it wasn't the crime itself that bothered her, but the fact that Richie was caught and imprisoned. Cynthia expressed frustration that Richie should have taken more drastic actions like cutting off Angela's fingers, burning down her house, or destroying all evidence to avoid arrest. Cynthia was also angry about a drop of blood the police found inside Richie's car. She confessed that they had worked together to clean up the traces. Cynthia often discusses the importance of committing crimes perfectly, so as to never get caught by the police. Cynthia admitted that they had been planned by both she and Richie for a long time. Richie did not want to share custody of the children with Angela's, and saw the crime as the only solution. Cynthia helped him plan it, but did not participate in the attack itself. Later, this recording was given to the police. Cynthia was arrested in 2018, and the trial began. She claimed that everything on the recording was a lie, and that she was set up. According to Angela, she wanted to impress a friend because she hoped to start a relationship with him, so she thought this story would make a strong impression. Law enforcement officials stated that Cynthia was the only person who knew the situation had the ability to prevent the murder, but she chose not to act. The prosecutor's office offered Cynthia a plea deal for a reduced sentence of 25 years, which she declined. She believed she could avoid responsibility due to the lack of evidence apart from a confession. She maintained her innocence regarding. However, a recording revealed that Cynthia actively participated in planning and preparing for the massacre. She also assisted in disposing of evidence, overseeing the murder, and even attempted to help Richie escape from prison in 2016. Authorities documented these activities and planned to file new charges against her. Cynthia was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempting to escape, resulting in a life sentence without parole, similar to Richie, who was already serving a sentence. Both Richie and Cynthia appealed their convictions, but their appeals were denied. After the trials, Angela's mother became the legal guardian of the children. The children moved to Jacksonville, Florida, to live with her in September 2017. The court initially ruled that Richie could not have contact with his children. However, this decision was later revised, allowing the children to decide on contact once they reach adulthood. Case 6. Diana Maria Kier Lopez Pinal was born on August 12, 1998, in Madrid, to parents Diana Cristina Lopez Pinal and Juan Carlo Kier. She has a younger sister named Valeria. Her family was wealthy, and everyone in the family was very close-knit. But their lives hit a snag in 2013 when Diana's parents divorced. However, the father still visits his daughter regularly on holidays. In the summer of 2016, Diana, her mother, and her younger sister spent their vacation in the small coastal town of Apab du Caramal, a place they had visited many times before. The town, with a population of around 10,000, is a quiet and picturesque retreat away from the hustle and bustle of city life. On the evening of August 21st, Diana told her mother that she was going to meet her friends at Valenclin Park to celebrate the Feast of the Virgin Carmen. The park was close to their vacation cottage, and Diana often walked there. Her mother gave her permission to go. Diana spent a fun evening with her friends, she unaware that it would be the last time they would see each other. At around 2:30 a.m., she said goodbye to her friends and began her home. On the way, she ran into a friend, Paso D. Ariel, near her favorite pizzeria. He was the last person to see Diana that night. The next morning, August 22nd, 2016, became a nightmare for Diana's mother, Christina. When she realized her daughter hadn't come home from the party, she grew concerned. Diana's phone was off, which only added to her worry. Without hesitation, Christina contacted the police and reported her daughter missing. According to Christina, Diana didn't have any serious emotional or mental health issues, despite her parents' divorce when she was younger. Police opened an investigation into Diana's disappearance, looking into the mysterious circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Diana's disappearance is a mystery that investigators must unravel. Their first clue came from the last message she sent to a friend in Madrid via WhatsApp. In these messages, Diana mentioned a stranger who was stalking her and shouting strange phrases, causing her to feel scared. Unfortunately, these were her last messages, after which she stopped replying to her friend's messages. During their search, they found a black hair band along the road that resembled the one Diana was wearing that night. Although this was the only evidence found at the scene of her disappearance, it gave investigators a clue to work with. Diana's friends had no information about her disappearance. Additionally, there were no CCTV cameras in the area where she was last seen. The street was dimly lit and deserted, with only a few garages and an old nightclub. Although some people reported seeing Diana get out of a car with 3 men and then get into another car, but these were not corroborated. The investigation into Diana's disappearance considered 2 primary theories. One possibility was that she was kidnapped by someone she knew. The other theory is that she was the victim of a random attack by a mentally unstable individual. Diana's mother proposed a third theory, speculating that her daughter might have been taken away by boat. New information emerged when Diana's friend and ex-boyfriend revealed that she had met a man from Morocco and purchased hashish with him. However, this detail only added to the complexity of the case. The media reported that the clothes Diana wore on the evening of her disappearance had been found, but her mother disputed it, saying it was not true. Several factors suggest that Diana did not leave voluntarily. Her credit cards and identification were still in the house. It suggests Diana's disappearance was forced, but the case remains unsolved and remains a mystery. After Diana vanished, the media reported on a fight between Diana and her mother that had occurred just days before. The press claimed that Diana had a nervous breakdown and needed medical attention. Her sister Valeria was also hospitalized with similar symptoms. To avoid conflict, the court awarded custody of Valeria to her father. The decision was made as a precaution due to the stress of Diana's disappearance. The father and Valeria left town, sparking rumors that the family was hiding something. Diana's friends revealed that running away from home was not unusual for her sisters, especially 16 years old Valeria. The family dynamics were complex, and arguments between the mother and daughters were common. This information raises a question: If Diana regularly left the house without any problems, why was her mother so worried this time? On August 31st, Diana's parents failed to appear for a press conference, where they were expected to provide an update on the investigation into their daughter's disappearance. According to the family's lawyer, her parents were too distraught to attend, as they were struggling to accept the possibility of never seeing Diana again. An article published in El Mundo on September 11th revealed new information about the family's situation. Contrary to the mother's claims that Diana did not have mental health issues, it was reported that Diana had previously gone missing for 3 days in April. During this time, she had turned off her phone and told her mother that she no longer wanted to live with her. The mother had not contacted the police, which raised concerns about her response to her daughter's behavior. Letters exchanged between Diana and her younger sister Valeria were also made public, shedding light on the emotional struggles both girls were facing. Valeria had been hospitalized multiple times in the past year, including one instance where she had to have her stomach pumped due to an overdose of prescription medication. Prosecutors have launched a new investigation into the alleged abuse of Valeria, the youngest daughter of the family, due to the lack of progress in the case of Diana's disappearance. The